To episode 71 of Tech Sales Insights. How time flies. Nour, how you doing?
Good to see you, Randy.
Great, good to be seen. Chris, thanks so much for joining.
My pleasure.
For those that had expected Mike Sullivan, unfortunately, he is a little ill under the weather. By chance, I bumped into him 2 nights ago in Naples, and I could, I told him, no, you're not going to be good enough. So Chris Smith was kind enough to fill in very much at the last minute. So look forward to having Chris. He's the Chief Revenue Officer at Aqua Security. And today, obviously, this is always brought to you by Sales Community. If you want to learn more, sell more, check out Sales Community at salescommunity.com. And we are sponsored by Sales Impact Academy. I describe them as the Peloton app for sales training. So if you think about Peloton, how you can get a live class or recorded class, it's kind of the same thing. And they also are different and better in that they actually have actual go-to-market experts that actually do the training. So example, Mark Roberge, who's the father of PLG. He's the one that talks about PLG and lots of other experts. And they also recently raised, I think announced today, a $22 million round from MIT, HubSpot, Stage 2, and some others. But before we get going, Nour, so you had my BC guy, Matt Ryan. You guys are the Falcons getting rid of, huh?
It's another brilliant move by our Atlanta Falcons, right? Trade Matt Ryan to, what is it, going to Detroit? I even forgot.
Colts. Indianapolis, yeah.
Yeah, sorry to use Matty Ice. Been good for us. Other than the 28-3 you often like to remind us of, but that's another story.
There you go. Whole team, not just him. So, and I've been doing some posts for the basketball. So obviously I'm rooting for Duke. Don't know others out there if they have any favorites or not, but certainly should be a classic with Duke UNC. So the title for today is Selecting the Right Company for You. So fantastic topic. Look forward to hearing more about. And Chris and I overlapped a little bit at HP. Truth be told, really didn't know each other. So I got some brief write-ups from a couple that folks that do know him well. So Mike Sullivan, who we were supposed to have, says that Chris is an absolute top performer, both individual contributor and in the leadership positions. He's extremely high energy and amazing in front of customers, builds high trust teams that would follow him anywhere. He has a nice balance between technical depth and business outcomes. He's best known for bringing in $10 million plus deals. So look forward to hearing more about that, Chris. I'm sure Aqua would love to have you do some of that. And then from Larry Irvin, who we've both known for a long time, says that you are polished, articulate, strong track record as a seller and sales leader, creative in your approach to business, understands people and how to attract strong talent and get the most from them. Non-professionally, he's also a great cook and piano player. So very interesting, very
Good digging. I owe some checks.
Diverse there. Oh, there you go. Fantastic. Good. So maybe starting off, maybe tell us a bit about your professional background.
Yeah, so I've been in sales since I got out of school. I'm from Pennsylvania. I started out there, wanted to break into high tech, and at that point, it was a pretty even split between California and Boston. And my sister was in the industry, working for Raytheon, so it was Boston for me. And I've been at 0 to 20 companies, 10 to 50, 50 to 100, and I started out in sales. Did really well. W-2s were great. And then I started seeing that the real money was in the equity. And so I started taking, bigger responsibility, naturally lesser on the W-2, heavier on the equity. And then I started seeing from there that it was better to go with a more risky play given where I was at in my career. So I started doing the 0 to 20 million and making money that way. And so I've got a lot of large company experience by way of 2 acquisitions, and I've got 7 company results, 2 IPOs, 5 mergers and acquisitions.
That's a fantastic background. So tell us a little bit more about Aqua Security.
So we're in a space called the Cloud Native Application Protection Platform. That doesn't sound great. I didn't name it. Gartner did. Say it backwards makes more sense. It says that you have to have a platform that offers protection for what? Applications, What kind? The ones developed in cloud native. And we basically just flat out stop cloud native attacks. And we're the only integrated platform, so it is an enterprise platform play that gives one version of the truth for vulnerabilities from dev through infrastructure and production.
And give us some context as to size, rounds of funding.
Yeah, so we took about 135 this time last year. Order of magnitude in the company, we're about 515 people now. We're hiring to 700. We're going to have a very good time. We're going to bring the whole company to the Lake Como region in Milano in a couple months. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, we'll be about 700 by the end of the year. And, we had a milestone, but it is not an end result of an IPO in 24 months.
That's awesome. And give us a little context in terms of the ideal customer profile. Who do you sell to, and some sample customers?
Yep. So cloud native is an interesting space, and it's still emerging. So we sell to the CISO. So probably 82% of the time we see the budget, it comes from the CISO, but it also is dev operations. So a little bit of the CIO organization too, because we span multiple organizations. And if you look at the profile, these are people who are developing in cloud native. These are people who know that their applications are wrappers to the crown jewels of their company. FinServ is a huge industry force. The government is becoming a large industry force. And if you really look at cybersecurity, you follow the biggest buying verticals and emerging verticals, it's really the same for us. About 70% of our revenue, rough and tough, comes from the Americas, but we do a terrific amount in EMEA and APAC, APJ as well.
We've had Sneak on. Who are some of the competitors? Is that one of them? And who else do you kind of competes in the similar space?
Yeah, actually, Sneak customers are our customers because Sneak sits on top of open source, and one of the open source technologies they sit on top of is Trivi, which is Aqua. So I think we're jointly serving the community, but they do have a facet of what we do. A lot of people do, because it's a new space, there's still settling to happen, like who's really your competitor versus maybe has 20% overlap. But there are people that, so Palo Alto, I would say, is probably the closest competitor because they also have a platform. It's not necessarily integrated, but it is a platform nevertheless, and they've been out there for a long period of time.
I love Randy and I love growth stories. I love that you're going from 500 to about 700 people. What do you tell recruits? What would you say is particularly special about the Aqua culture?
So we have a saying that we listen. We don't just listen, but we hear and we respond. And that is one of the hallmarks of a great company. Jack Welch actually talked previously about the same thing. And if you look at companies that make it and do really well, they listen to customers and they listen to the field organization. It's not that the field organization is greater than any organization, but they're the closest connected tissue to the customer. And not all customers are right, but when you find common thread, you damn well better listen.
Oh, that's great. Hey, so you talked about on that Lake Como trip. So it's not just a sales kickoff. It's actually the whole company.
Yeah, we're doing an SKO. We actually just had our virtual SKO, but we're doing a 2.0 on the front end of it. And then for 3 days, we're bringing the entire company out to a really nice resort, which we sequestered for the company.
Wow, so over 500 employees, right?
Yeah, it'll be about 550 at that point.
That's awesome.
Wow, awesome. That's great. We'll have to get an guest invite, Nour, maybe, or something.
Well, it actually speaks to, the founders of the company are a big believer in that the people, first of all, getting people with cloud native application experience, hard. Getting them to stick, hard. This is a tough market, and those people are highly sought after. So if you're not making investments in them and they don't have a familial bond to the company and the mission, money isn't going to be enough to hold on to them.
Yeah, that's great. Totally.
Randy Saddle, I'm going to ask for a sales community offsite somewhere, like that. Just pointing it out.
Perfect. Naples would be a great spot. And just a reminder for those that are watching, you can see us or hear us. We cannot see you. We can't hear you, but you certainly can post any questions. And we've got Tucker behind the scenes as always to pull them up, and we will get to those as you have them. So definitely feel free to ask anything there. So Chris, getting to our question, selecting the right company for you. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I have a saying, and I actually say this to candidates often, and that is that the hard road is the easy path. And what do I mean by that? I'll ask people how they researched their biggest acquisition in the last 5 years, boat, house, whatever it is, second house. And I'll find that they did Excel spreadsheets. They looked deeply into it. They were very proud of their buying process and all the data they collected. And yet, they don't spend nearly that amount of time when they're actually going to invest in the next 3 to 5 years of where they're going to live. And, time's more precious a commodity than money. So at a topical level, I've ripped this off. This isn't me. I ripped it off from Ben Horowitz in The Hard Thing About Hard Things. But he basically says there are 3 major branches to the tree of success in choosing a company to be with. The first is market. And there are a lot of underpinnings to that. The second is the people, and the third is the product offering. Now, a lot of people will get that twisted. And by the way, that's an order of importance. And they'll say, it's all about the product. Well, if you have a great product and you have great people, but you have a very small total addressable market, you're going to have a small outcome. And let's face it, we're not doing startups to have a small outcome. And, if the product's not where it needs to be, but you've got the right people and you've got the right market, soon the product will. Why? Because you'll do your research, you'll listen, you'll respond, you'll react, and you'll overcompensate whatever deficits you have.
Oh, that's great. So tell us more about that. Like I'm sure you've gone through this with your different companies, but when you look at the market, what are some things that you consider?
So, in real estate, it's location, location, location. And in the market, it's all about the product and the time. What do I mean by that? Well, forget about Series A through Z as it relates to funding. Are they innovators? Are they early adopters? Is it early, late stage? Is it laggards? And when you look at the product timing, if we're to be honest, a lot of the technologies out there, which is why it's hard to get attention from CISOs, they're technologies in search of a market, meaning they could be early to market, they could be late to market, both are really, really bad. So the product market fit and timing is huge. I already mentioned the market size, that's a big one. Another thing that I think people overlook, and I mentioned this to you before, is Clay Christensen's job theory. What does it mean? It means, what job are they hiring your technology to do for them? Because people will talk about why somebody procured their technology, but believe me, it's solving a problem. It's making them better, faster, more secure. It's doing something like that. And if you are not solving a problem, you're not going to consistently get big deals. Last thing I'll leave you with is something that I've coined the remore style swimming. What is remore style? So you're down in Naples, right? Remores are these fish, and they live off of really big fish. And I think this is key to a market. So for me, I'll give you an example. When I was looking at this particular space, I was looking at drivers, digital transformation, $7 trillion going to be spent between now and the end of 2025, $805 billion cloud native services. So what? Well, that transformation is happening. So because that transformation is happening, people care about security. So now I'm in the zip code. Now I start looking at security companies that are in this huge space. And I call it the remore style because, as a startup, you're a little fish compared to something like that. But again, it gets a little bit back to market size.
Oh, great. Product market fit's huge. And then, probably the value, right? So why is somebody spending the money on the product? What's it going to mean for them?
Yeah, it's funny. Sales often will say if someone buys it, they bought because of the relationship, and if they don't buy, it's because of the product. And the reality is, in enterprise sales, and that's my entire background. So it has been enterprise. These are large deals. I think Sully mentioned something about 10 million. I wish they were all that, but still large deals. People aren't going to part with that cash just because they like you, they like your service, they like the features of your product. It's got to be solving something that is much bigger than the price tag that they're willing to give you. And again, that gets back to the job theory. And what's funny, Randy? I find a lot of people don't know why customers bought. I'm talking marketing, customer success, the people that are on the inside selling, and the people that are even in management responsible for a number. And you'll hear them give you an answer to the question, why do they buy? but you know that the answer isn't the reason they bought. It's like the 3 levels of why to get to it.
Yep, totally. And what things do you consider on the people side? I assume the internal team.
Yeah, so I alluded to this earlier, but from a people perspective, there's the intangible, and this is the Jack Welch thing I was mentioning. I'm not going to get it exactly right, but he said something about an organization's ability to learn and to take action rapidly is like the biggest competitive advantage. Somebody will Google that, and I think I got that like 90%. But first thing I look at is show me the CEO. And there's something I don't think a lot of people talk about, but I've worked for first-time CEOs. I've worked for people that don't have any go-to-market experience. As a CRO, you need to be very, very cautious in that. I don't hear a lot of people talk about it, but we all know that's a big deal. So do they have go-to-market experience? Big checkbox for me. Well, why does it matter? Here's why it matters. What's their view on marketing? What's their view on sales? What's their view on customer success? Did they develop things in a vacuum, or are they going out and searching for a problem and backing it up with the development for said product? Second thing, culture. Churn and burn lifestyle company, country club. Is it a fraternity, or is it a get stuff done? Accountability. The first company that I was privileged to work for that was really successful was Mercury. And our CEO, who was a get everyone rallied and want to run through a wall, and on Landon, he said, you got to major on the majors. And he said, we do 3 things as a company. We build shit, we sell shit, and the rest is bullshit. And I'm always looking for somebody who's thinking of it like that, because that's just the truth. And so the CEO becomes a really big piece. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but I would say the board also. And what are you looking for in the board? A lot of people in the board, they come there by way of, financial background or technical background. You need that. But I think there needs to be a balance of somebody in the board that has go-to-market. And that becomes a real, especially for a CRO, and that's largely your audience here, is if you have no go-to-market representation and they don't have a healthy appreciation for the market, you better hope you have a lot of luck on your side.
Absolutely. And then what about on the product side?
So from a product perspective, I'm not going to talk about the feature functionality because that's very specific to whatever somebody's looking at. For me, if you look at companies who've IPO'd, and that's always in my my scope, they have a few things that the product enables. One, land and expand. You need to be able to get back and sell more after you've sold. So it can't just be feast or famine, big deals, nothing, big deals, nothing. And people always say the same damn sales cycle, 8 and 9 months. The truth is, a lot of these big deals are 15 to 18 month sales cycles. Yeah. Nobody talks about it, but that's the truth. So land and expand. Why? Because you want your run rate business to get you to 60, 70% of your number so that those big deals put you over and you're an accelerator. That's one. Second thing I would say is service-led offering. What do you mean by that? Sometimes the easiest money to get is for services. And if you can get in with a service-led offering, whether it's through the system integrators or yourself, that's a really nice way to get your pipeline generation. And the other thing I would say from a product is it needs to be able to answer to a prospective buyer, why should they choose your product? Why do they need it now? And does it solve their problem in the best way? And we call it competition, but to them, it's just an alternative path to solve the problem.
That's great. And are you kind of prescriptive then, kind of called old school, kind of Ben Franklin, then as you're looking at different companies, kind of writing all that out?
Yeah, I would show you how boring I was in coming to this particular company. And there's a saying, youth is wasted on the youth. And one of my passions is, man, if I knew 25 years ago what I know now to look for, you get lucky, but you want to be lucky all the time. And you start to get really good at knowing what to go after. So, I interviewed with 19 companies seriously, and I had a tab for each of them, and I had all the competitors, and I had about 37 different cells in the spreadsheet to look at, because all these things are data points. But when the data points are all connected, they start to tell a story, and you can really start to see where this company's going, what is the trajectory. Then you make your pick, and away we go.
Yeah. So I would think about, so those are great points, the market, the people, the product, but if you got to think about, kind of personally, a financial outcome. So I would imagine valuation plays in, especially now you've got some unicorns that are, $2-3 billion valuation. If you're getting the stock at that value, it's harder to get the uplift versus, something that might have a more reasonable valuation. Does that also come into play?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy to say that just 2 weeks ago, there was something I posted on LinkedIn, and they said, hey, here are the top 27 unicorns. And of those, here are the top 10 to watch. And of those top 10, it was us, Aqua Security, and 4 of our competitors. So 50% of the top 10. So I'm thinking, man, I'm getting something right here. But if you look at the market, you go, how do we know what is going to be the right company? I don't think I would say this though, if we just knew if there's really a formula, the VC community would have a much better batting average than they do, and they're full of very smart people that do hundreds of interviews, maybe even a day. The gap though between what the ARR is and the pre-money valuation tells you a lot. I'm seeing a lot of these unicorns that have these very significant, and I won't be specific to call out any particular company, but very specific pre-money valuations that are, 10-ish. And yet the revenue is like, in the $70-80 million range. That's a big gap. So guess what? I don't think people do the math. People that are going to start with a company like that toothpaste is already out of the tube. The profit for you coming in, it's not there. And oh, by the way, the bigger that gap is, the longer the period before you would IPO, say that you might have a down run when you IPO, or you go through M&A. So you've got to be real careful with that. And one guy talking, but I think you need to be a little bit conservative between the gap between what your ARR is and what you go with that pre-money valuation, because of course that's also expectations for your shareholders, meaning your board.
So would that be a fourth a fourth bullet, maybe be money or evaluation or something like that comes into play?
For me, that's a little bit about the market too, because, depending where a market is, if it's all at the innovator status, you're not going to see these type of valuations, but, the feeding frenzy happens, right? It happens with VCs. Everyone's says it's hot. And so the money comes in, and it comes in with some pretty high valuations.
Yeah, but I think your overall comments around, if you're getting a car or a house or whatever, you go through this kind of analytical process. Your job is obviously, just as important, if not more important. And other topics that we've had too, we'll talk about, just like your personal life goaling, right? You do goals for your business. Your life should be more important than your business. Do goals for your business, but that same analytical process goes. So Larry, who's a mutual friend and colleague, both of us, says, great seeing you, Chris. What company stage have you experienced growing your leadership skills the most, and how?
I would say my leadership skills grew the most in my biggest challenges, and consequently where I've had some of the most fun. And I would say taking a company from 0 to 20 was probably at that point the most challenging. But what I've realized I'm now doing more scale up deals and startup deals, is the challenges are real on both areas. They're just different challenges. But I would say leadership probably, Larry, on the scale up, because the interpersonal skills and the time management skills and hiring the right people are an integral part of that. It's less about trying to figure out that timing, product, market, motion, and it's more about getting the right people so you can go win.
So, Chris, you mentioned travel, and you mentioned Como for the SKO and the company meeting. One of the challenges with this pandemic over the last couple of years is a whole lot of us haven't traveled, and we've had to navigate engaging, influencing, helping those enterprise clients buy kind of remotely. Have you been traveling? What's been that experience like? Talk a little about engaging on the front lines of those CISOs and those relationships.
Yes. Okay. So one, I'm so happy to see people in person again. That is so lovely. I've given more hugs when I've seen people than I ever have in my life. And travel's getting better. We're based out of Burlington, Mass. But so a lot of the SKOs and different things I'm doing, I've been bringing people in. So I haven't had to travel a ton in the U.S. I'm going to RSA, but I've done a lot of international travel. So Vienna, Barcelona. I mentioned we're taking people to Milan. I'm going to Israel. Our R&D is based out of Israel. Corporate is based out of Israel. So I'm going to be going over there as well. And then, we're doing a lot of hiring in Northern EMEA. So I'm going to be going to the UK in a bit. But yeah, I think it's getting better. Travel has not been the same in the last 20 plus, 50 to 20 years anyway. It's a little bit more interesting, and every country has their own rules. I hope by the end of this year that's going to stabilize, and that we're actually going to have a common, way for you to be able to get into a certain place. But it's great to be out.
Oh, great. And then kind of talking a little bit more back on the people side. So any hiring best practices that you have?
Yeah. So first of all, I think we all know it's hard to find good people. Good people are paid a lot these days. Maybe they always should have. Maybe it's just a supply and demand thing. But it's hard to find good people. First thing I would say is you have to cast a wide net. CROs often run into this value conversation with the founders. Again, this gets back to do you have go-to-market blood in your founder? Because a lot of times they'll say, we're not doing any recruiting. You have to do that all on your own. Well, I don't care how popular you are and how long you've been doing this. The good people that you want to pull, everyone wants to pull them because they're in thin air. So they're hard to get. And then you do it for a while. You don't know when somebody's actually looking, even though you might have a great relationship with them, because you got 10,000 people that you're linked into. You just don't know anymore. So you need to do the recruiting agencies. So cast a wide net, first thing. Second of all, script them. We script our inside sales folks, but I don't see people doing videos or writing scripts for the recruiters. You have to now. You have to give them why, in my case, Aqua, why now? Why is it a great place for you? And why should you be here versus anywhere else? They have to, the better they are, the better your success is going to be. And then the last thing I would say is, I've done a lot of hiring. I've hired 7 VPs since I've been here. It's been 8 months. My Saturdays and Sundays have all been calls and recruiting. I mean, family time too, but I've been doing probably 4 to 6 hours each day in recruiting because we're building a team. If I don't get my fingerprints on these people and put the right DNA into the team now, that's going to cost me for the next 2 years.
Well, that's great. So, by the way, embarrassingly enough, I didn't tell you I actually have a recruiting business as well, so we can talk offline about that. And then once you've hired them, what about things that you do around retaining them? Probably I'm sure you do some coaching, you do some training. What do you do there?
So we have a program that we haven't implemented yet, but it's coming, and the acronym is BLUE. It stands for Brilliant, Leading, Unique, and Exceptional. And what we're trying to, so first, you get hired. So Randy, you decide you want to work for Aqua Security. We'd be delighted to have you, by the way. And you're going to start. As soon as you sign that offer letter, a kicker goes on in our system, and we have a whole swag box, and we have good swag here, coming out to you. Second thing is, and I do this for all of my direct reports, we send something to the significant others of the people that we've hired. By the way, as part of the hiring process, geographically, it's hard, but I try to always meet them for dinner, and I bring my wife with me because, again, I want to underscore the importance of it. You can really learn about a candidate by meeting a significant other. Now they get on. The first thing is idle hands is a bad deal. So how do we get them? And this is probably staple for everybody else. How do we get them up and running as fast as possible? I think the easiest thing to do, though, that people don't always do, is the role playing. So what I do, if you remember the show, what was it where the boss, there was a hidden boss, and he would come into his own business dressed as something else. Whatever that is, I do that in one way or another, whether it's an email that they get or something. I start interacting with them as if I'm a prospect or somebody from the company, but it's not me. And then I'll call them just out of the blue and do a role play. And it's not to test them because I'm trying to see if they're good. It's just to try to make sure we have some fun and that they get up to speed quickly, because it's really bad for someone to talk about our company while at our company, even if they've been there one day, if they don't represent it well. It'd be better they said nothing. The faster we get them to say the right thing so people can put us in the right box, better off we are.
That's great. So what was the acronym was brilliant?
Leading, unique, and exceptional. It's not just onboarding and sales, but we have 17 stations of interface with us and our customers. And we're putting a program in place because, look, today you have to be differentiated, not from a people perspective, retention, recruiting, but also from a product. I mean, you think about this. Customers will give you some huge PO. Let's call it $10 million. And what do they get? They barely get an onboarding program. Like some companies give them a cake and they're thrilled to get a cake. Why aren't we doing better? So I think that there are just a lot of different things that we can do that fall into blue. And so it's part of the program.
That's great.
Love that. Love that.
So you mentioned the $10 million deals, and I forgot to ask before when Larry and Mike had mentioned that. So maybe I don't know if there's any specifics that you can give around any of those $10 million type wins and or secrets to those successes.
Yeah. So, okay. So I'm going to distill this down to something digestible, because the answer to that is anything but digestible. But and again, this is going to be 101 to most of the people on the list. Most deals like that have multiple stakeholders and they have multiple buyers, often a committee. And so, you need to do your BBA, if you call it that, everyone has a different acronym for it, but basically the stakeholders, you need to know what the problem is. You need to have met with each of them, the people that are users on up to the, some would call it economic buyer, some would call it the people with power. And you need to say, hey, what's your specific problem? Have we solved that specific problem? You need to give it back to them in writing, because something real happens then. It's not just a conversation. And say, look, we're meeting with so-and-so or some consortium or some board, and I'm going to be representing you with this and me as a solution to that. These things don't happen overnight, but what happens is people think they're going to get a big deal because they're talking to some one person or two people. It's not going to happen like that. You're going to cast a wide net. You're going to get buy-in from everybody, and you're going to have to herd cats, and it takes a while to do it. And then, of course, you're going to have to be able to solve a big problem. You're never getting a deal that size.
For our audience, if you just joined us, you're listening to Chris Smith, the Chief Revenue Officer at Aqua Security. He's got wisdom like pouring out with insights that I'm convinced he's earned over the years. So Chris, from your days at Mercury Interactive to Instant Logic to what you're doing now, talk a little about how selling is evolved, how the role of the CRO is evolved. Just talk a little about the evolution of kind of your function, your role.
Yep. Okay. So selling, and it gets into customer success too. Back in the day, which seems like it wasn't that long ago, but regrettably it was. Back in the day, we sold perp licenses, perpetual licenses with maintenance on it. So let's say you had a 100K deal, and you got $25,000 in maintenance. The customer would buy off on this 100K deal, and that was the hardest. Like if you look at XY axis, this was the hard part, but getting that first deal, that was the hard part, because they'd amortize over 3 or 5 years. So you were guaranteed to keep that customer 3 to 5 years. Not guaranteed. You had to do some really egregious stuff to lose them, but you could lose them. I mean, anyone could certainly make that happen, but you get the customer. And now you have these people called customer success people. Back then, they were just like, renewals folks. And they would get the renewals, and they would call them like, what, a month, 2 months before to make sure they're getting the renewal? Dude, those days are so far gone, it's insane. In fact, I'm going to make an argument. I'm going to say if you don't have somebody with sales DNA running your customer success organization, you're probably in trouble, because they probably got to that C-level by way of perpetual license and not ARR. Maybe they've evolved like I have, but if they don't have a sales DNA and you expect them to run by the way, it's the biggest book of business. The renewals part is the biggest book of business in these ARR models. And if you have not only shown they're getting value, but shown it back to not the user, but the person who has power, why are you thinking you're getting your deal? And by the way, when do you start calling? Day one. When do you start trying to get value? Day one. What type of time do you have to get there? Maybe a month, maybe 2 months. A lot of these deals are 1 year deals. You got a 1 year deal and you're not deployed in 6 months, forget about it. You're in trouble. So if you look from my perspective, I think selling really, really starts in an ARR model the day you got that first PO. And that gets into product. How quickly can the product get deployed and you can show value? And that gets into the renewal. What are you doing to differentiate? And then, of course, if you're in a commoditized space and you're not differentiated, I mean, look, case in point, I won't mention company names, but application or source code scanning companies. There are a few in Boston. What are they doing? They're trading customers every other year, and it's a race to the bottom on erosion on what they're getting per unit. Why is that? They have to differentiate because it's become a commodity.
So again, so in that, I absolutely agree. That and Seidel has heard me talk about this a lot, that the relationship, exactly what you said, relationship starts when they buy, right? That's really when all that you've promised is not got to come to fruition. So how does that then change the role of the CRO? And then, you know where I'm going to go with this next. You brought up customer success. It's got to have a sales DNA. Marketing ideally is also focused on really articulating that differentiation. And so talk a little about structure, the role of the CRO, and then structure.
Yep. So CRO wasn't CRO, it was VP of sales, a worldwide VP of sales. And that was good enough at the point. And then all of a sudden, I think a lot of VPs of sales wanted to be CEOs. So now they have a C in their title and they're feeling at least a lot better. And then I think people started recruiting and now everybody's a CRO. Which is great. It's fine. It's a lofty title. It sounds better at a cocktail party. But what does it mean? Like, what is the responsibility? If you look at a lot of CROs, there really isn't go-to-market responsibility. What do I mean by that? Are you responsible for the messaging? Are you responsible for whether you're a spray and pray or you're, an account-based marketing? Are you responsible for even the taglines in your company? And responsible doesn't mean org chart. It doesn't necessarily mean they report into you. It means that you've got to be heavily involved in that. Here's what I would say. A CRO that does not have a good working relationship pre or existing with their CMO or Chief Customer Success Officer is not actually a CRO. They are a person that is a VP of sales. Is that bad? No. Very tough role, super meaningful to the company. Whether they report into you or not, your tentacles have to be across all three of those organizations. And by the way, if you're just a VP of sales and you're not getting the renewals, guess what? You have to sell more. If they are a model, it's a balloon squeeze. You got to sell more now. So your quota goes up. So they're directly responsible for each other.
So I think you mentioned a prerequisite of the structure before you joined Aqua. Talk a little about the whole, and again, Randy and I see a lot of this us and them, right? It's not, we're not talking about we, which where you see it's just not as efficient as it could be. But talk a little about your structure at Aqua.
Yeah. So I have, I'll lead up to it because I think it's philosophically maybe more interesting. I've been at companies where there was the typical friction with the CMO. And then I made it my prerequisite that I had to have the CMO and the Chief Customer Success Officer org chart reporting into me. I don't have that here, and I'm okay with that here because, number one, I had worked with the Chief Customer Success Officer before, way back at Mercury. And I'm not at a point in my life where I'm trying to, build titles and I'm trying to build org charts. I'm trying to have really good outcomes. So I already knew that gentleman, and there's a lot of mutual trust there, so we're good, and we interact with each other really well. The CMO was new, so I spent a lot of time with him before I joined because if that wasn't going to work, then this probably wasn't my home. And since then, I would tell you that I probably thought it was going to be good, and it has not been good. It has been excellent. We are partners in crime. I bring him onto most of my calls. There isn't a, hey, how come I don't have leads? Hey, you're not doing the right things with the leads. Like that's low frequency, low rent conversation. It's not even productive, really. You got it, but those two, especially the CMO, man, those two, they have to be thick as thieves. Where does that come from, though? Go back to my first statement. Does your CEO, co-founder, or founder of the company have go-to-market experience. Because if they don't, and you don't have that representation on the board, they might not know, they might know ethereally, but they might not have hard knowledge of how important that is to a company. And, a house divided can't stand. So if you've got your CMO and your CRO and they're at odds, you're done.
And regrettably, Randy and I see a lot of brilliant technologist CEOs who just don't have the background, don't really understand the impact of marketing and customer success, and it is definitely friction, fraud with friction, if you will.
Yep.
Yeah. So from Scott Williams, we have a nice comment. Highly useful insights, Chris. So appreciate that. So reminder, anybody watching, feel free to ask any questions, and we'll definitely get to them. And just want to give Sales Impact Academy another plug. I consider them a Peloton app for go-to-market training. Some great industry experts that do live and recorded training, and definitely something that you all should check out. So as we move on here, what about the importance of sales ops and rev ops? I mean, back in the old, go back, whatever, probably even 10 years ago, was all the data was kind of in what I call the rear view mirror. Now it's just amazing, how much great information there is.
So I'll give you a story. I'll leave the company name out, but it's a company that I've worked for. We were.
We like specifics here. So first letter.
You'll be able to pick it out. I just don't know what I'm able to say about it. We did have an outcome. We were acquired for $1.8 billion, and we had about half that on the table. I'm getting to the importance of sales ops. The difference, yes, some slight negotiation and a few dinners, but the difference was the pristine nature and the confidence in the data, the go-forward data in Salesforce.com. And we had an amazing, this gentleman was amazing. I can mention his name, Lars Nilsson, who's with Snowflake now as their guy. Very, very good at what he does. And one of the reasons we got to a higher valuation. And why was that? Number one, he was a great leader and he was respected by sales. So that's key. And he had a cross-pollination that a lot of people in sales offices don't. He was not just a numbers person. He was a business person who understood numbers. And there's a difference. So what he was able to do is he was able to get even the good salespeople who are notoriously not great in Salesforce and the other things that give us the ability to be able to predict cadence and see what's going to happen. He was able to coerce them, carrot and stick, a little bit of both, to do what they needed to do so we could run the business. And you can't improve upon what you can't measure. You can't measure what you can't see. So he was really good about getting really useful, truthful data into Salesforce, and it's a really big deal. So how hard is it to find someone like that? It's really, really hard. It's really hard. And that's why whether, a CRO is a numbers person or not, they need to be. They need to be a numbers person through and throughout, because if they're not, the numbers tell a story, but the story is more important than the numbers. Well, what do I mean by that? It sounds like doublespeak. Well, actually, it's exactly what it is. But what I mean by that is the numbers are data points for you to make the right decisions on how to run the business. The problem is, what is the integrity of most people's numbers? I'm not talking about the forecast. That's probably the best buttoned up part. I'm talking about, hey, what's your hello to PO close ratio? Is it real? Like, how many POVs do you actually need to do? And there's, pages on pages of all this data. How many people do you need to hire? How many essays do you need to be able to accomplish that? The unpacking of the number becomes huge, and it's exactly what prospective buyers of the company do, and the people who are going to be underwriters as you go through an SEC S1 filing. That becomes the everything. So you better be sure you've got a really solid sales ops leader.
Absolutely. And what about on the sales tools side that you use? I think you mentioned you've got Gong that you're implementing.
Yep. I'll hit a couple that come to mind. So Gong, IO, don't have this yet, but we're going to get it. Decision Link, Clary. Of course, Salesforce and BI and a number of other things. But what I will tell you is why Gong? I love Gong because it's your mirror. It shows you how you're actually doing. Like, if, again, do you want to be able to listen in on conversations and see how people, when we were in sales and we always were in front of people and in boardrooms, remember we did like 8 in-person meetings a day? Remember those days? You quickly know what was working and not. Especially in the last 2 years, we've been removed from that. We can't see the whites of their eyes. We can't see the frown. We can't see the buying or not buying body language. You can't see that anymore. Gong is visibility into that. The decision link, why I like that, salespeople aren't always consistent, right? So I never want a proposal. We still have them. We're going to fix this. But I don't want a proposal going out. A proposal should be the 5th page price tag for all the good stuff they saw on the first 4 pages. Too often, people sell a quote. Are you kidding me? It's nuts. Decision Link gives you the ability to say, hey, why us? Why now? Why no other path? What are the BDAs that matter? How is this going to make it better, faster, cheaper, more secure? And oh, by the way, here's a slight price tag for doing good business together. And I like it from that perspective. So, there's some really great sales tools out there. And Clary for transparency and accountability, for sure. Great tool.
Awesome. And then you also use Visualize kind of to help with your, I'll say, sales methodology training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What I would tell you is it's nothing new here versus other companies I've seen. I think why does PTC do such a good job, in my opinion? They have always hired people from outside the industry that get sales that now can learn a new way of selling, which is technology. But our industry is full of people that understand technology and I think over-rotate on technology. They sell tech to techies. Well, that's how you get small deals. You don't get $10 million deals selling tech to techies. Do you have to? Sure. Is it relevant? Sure. But the thing is, my father always said this, that people that know why will always employ people that know how. The people that use product know how to do stuff, but they don't know necessarily why they're doing it. Where you hang out with the people that know why they're doing it, those are the people that have the big budgets. So why do I like Visualize? Because it makes the technology the underpinnings to the important stuff. And it's very important. I'm not saying it's not. But in and of itself, it's not. The feature functionality, tuple is not why you're going to be successful as a company. And what they do is they take a look what that is as the cornerstone, as the building block, and they build off of that to the business value. And believe it or not, it's harder to get successful people who've been successfully selling tech to go and now sell at the C-suite because they've always been successful selling tech. But the thing is, if they combined the greatness that they're doing at that level with what they could be doing at the C-suite, imagine how many $10 million deals they could be doing.
Chris, this is fantastic, and Ernie had a great question on the tech stack. So thanks for going through that. Thanks for talking about 6 Sense and Gong and Clary and Decision Link. Sounds like you guys have got a great stack going on. Switch gears for a second and talk to us about your channel strategy. In our conversation, you mentioned it's critical to your success. You're investing in it. Talk a little about kind of how the channels evolved and kind of how do you guys use channels at Aqua?
Yep. All right. So I have a 4-pillar approach. So this is the way I look at channels. First, the system integrators. Second is the value-added resellers and the distributors. I put that in one box. Third are the MSSPs. So, probably more for mid-market. And then the fourth is the technical alliances. So for us, and I'll explain what I mean by technical alliances. For us, we're in the cloud. So we're security for cloud-native applications. So who would those technical alliances be? Well, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, right? AWS. So that becomes really big because they have a marketplace. And you've probably heard about this, but the marketplace is great. Why is the marketplace great? We used to ask for flow down from VARs. You don't need it anymore. You have the marketplace. So you don't need to have a contract with a customer. I mean, that's like the longest pole in the tent sometimes from hello to closing a deal. So that's one. Two, they often, especially with the Fortune 1000, they often have a bucket of money sitting somewhere that you can tap into. So now, we're helping people find money. It's a really strong go-to-market. By the way, footnote on that, if the VARs, in my humble opinion, if the VARs have not elevated to doing more system integrator type deals, service-led deals, I think they're going to have a tough time because the marketplace is really competing with them. So the most important to me is the cloud relationships, and then the second is the system integrators. That's a big go-to-market. Why? System integrators do help define markets. System integrators, this is specific to me, but it's specific to anyone else who's in cloud. The system integrators have direct relationships with these people that are doing that $7 billion transformation that's happening right now. They're the ones involved in it. They're at ground zero. So to be able to partner with them and to give them something that they can go out and then have a really good conversation for us, it's enabling them to do scanning. They can go out and have a conversation around, what does cloud native application security look like? It's a boomerang that comes back. It's a big investment. It takes a long time to start seeing the fruits of your labor. But when you do, the big fruits.
Great insights. Randy.
That's awesome. So along the way, we've all had kind of mentors that have given us some great feedback, advice. What are mentors that you've had? Some great advice that you've received?
Let's see. So one thing that I've received is never take an A role in a B opportunity. I deviated from that once. I regretted it. Never take an A role in a B opportunity. There's a lot of truth to that, and it gets back to the market piece. That's one piece. And the second thing is, and I got this early on in my career, and it's somebody that I'm still friends with today. And they said, never treat anyone in your care as if you don't care. Sounds a little hokey maybe, but I kind of, the way I look at that is everybody is worth the same weight as somebody else, irrespective of their position or stature or what their bank account might have in it. And I think it's a good way to look at it because I think there's a real strength in being humble. And I think people deeply appreciate that. And as you have success, you just sometimes need to remind yourself of it because if you don't, others will.
That's great. What about advice that you would give to your younger self?
Yeah, I would say it's actually a little bit your last question. Search out a mentor that has been doing this for a long period of time. They can take a lot of the guesswork out. I've talked to some of my peers and I'm like, why didn't we know half the stuff we know now? And it's like, yeah, well, youth is wasted on the youth. But that's what mentors are for. They're the been there, done that, screwed up here, screwed up there, got it right more than I got it wrong. Let me tell you what not to do. And have enough lack of pride to reach out to them on all your big decisions. Don't try to be an island. Bad deal. Mentors a big part of people's success.
That's great. Nour?
Yeah, so I'm a lot of the sales community members are also, Chris, in the spring of their careers. If you think of inside sales, whether we call them, SDRs, BDRs, ISRs, build on that for a second in terms of, I've got an 18-year-old who wants to go to intersection of technology and business. How do you structure their success and really build that, Seidel and I talk about the EMC days where they had a hunting school, kind of bring them in, mold them, really teach them how to engage and influence and build and nurture relationships and be smart and scrappy. Talk a little about that structure.
So the first thing I would say is so let's say they're going to go through a natural migration. They're going to start out as someone who's I'll leave the BDR and all the other vernaculars out. Somebody who's setting up appointments. They're going to start there. If they're going to start there, make sure that company has a strong training program. A lot of them don't. Those strong training programs tend to come from the bigger companies. Yes, there's a little bit of churn and burn. It's a grind, but it's worth the time. Put in the effort. Because the bigger companies, you mentioned PTC earlier, they have superb training. They are masters of getting people trained up and putting them through a process. A lot of these startups just aren't. They just kind of throw things at a wall and hope that things work. So One, strengthen training program. Two, get a blueprint for their map. Do they actually, because if they don't have an answer to what I'm going to walk through, walk away. If they can't tell you, hey, I started as a BDR, when do I become an ISR or a BDR lead? If there isn't like, hey, start here, you're doing a good job, here are the metrics, get here in 6 months as a BDR lead. Another 3 months of being successful there, hey, you're an ISR, you're selling stuff over the phone. Hey, you do a really good job after that, you can go on and get into channels, you can get into sales. You're not going to have the best accounts, but you'll work your way up. You're going to be a territory person. Then you have mid-market accounts or the bigger accounts. Then you can work your way to a SAM or to a. If they don't have that, walk away, because what you're going to do is you're going to walk into that traditional churn and have to go to another company. And it's look, sales is hard. Setting up appointments and making all those dials is brutal. It's brutal. So you don't want to be in it forever.
That's great point. Great insight. Note to self: send Nour Jr. to Chris for 6 months to a year to shape him up.
Yeah, and it's like you get somebody here in violent agreement with what you're saying. Obviously, PTC does have a fantastic culture. So from Jonathan, most of our investors are former leaders at PTC. They truly know how to train and enable sales orgs. So good validation for you there. So Chris, you've been awesome. Nour, thanks. Chris, any last comments or words of wisdom?
No, I first of all, thank you, Nour, and thank you, Randy, for having me on. I think it's been fun. I really appreciate these forums. We need more of them. And I hope your audience got something meaningful out of today. So happy to be here.
Great. So certainly thanks to both of you. Thanks to sales community, and thanks to Sales Impact Academy for sponsoring this. We actually have a master class we're going to be doing with Sales Impact Academy for revenue leaders. It's going to be called Measuring What Matters. And Mandy Cole, who's a fantastic industry expert and partner at Stage 2, will be co-hosting that with a leader that we'll be naming shortly. It's probably going to be April 14th or mid-April or so. So be on the lookout for that. And I believe, I don't want to talk out of school, I think it's an invite only. So if there are folks that may not get invited that want to be invited, certainly you can reach out to me. So Chris Smith, CRO of Aqua Security, you've been fantastic. Thank you so much. Next week, we're going to be at episode number 72, and we'll have Dan Wright, who's CEO of Data Robot, and it will probably be on Tuesday, East Coast time, between 4 and 5. He has a meeting with the governor of a state that I can't say that kind of trumped ours, so we're happy to move around the schedule, and his admin, Holly's been great. In case you're listening, Holly, thanks. So look forward to having Dan next week. So again, Chris and Nour, thanks so much. And everybody have a great week. We, Tucker and Jesse, get this replayed all over different types of social media. So for those that have not seen it, that you want to have others see it, they should be able to easily find it. And you can always go to Sales Community to check it out as well. So, all right, have a good one, everybody.